It's not fair. How could you take him from us? Our kids are still so young. Because of you, they're going to grow up without a father. Are you happy? Are you satisfied?
I began to cry too. I nearly fainted because everyone in the courtroom held nothing but hatred in their eyes for me. The crying woman in front of me made me regret every single bad action I made. The judge quickly read out the charges and the sentences. It was as if he wanted to get rid of me as fast as he could. I was sentenced to life in prison. I saw my parents crying silently. I knew I disappointed them in the worst way. As for the damage to my spine, it meant I would never fully recover. Hi there, my name is Salim. I'm 27 years old, and I'm serving a life sentence in prison. You might wonder what could lead a young man like me to spend the rest of his life behind bars. To be honest, it all boils down to a string of reckless decisions that I made along the way. I grew up in a loving Muslim household with my parents. They did everything they could to give me a comfortable life. From the moment I was born, it was clear I was their pride and joy. I lived in a spacious, well-furnished home, attended the best schools, and wore clothes that were always in style. My parents spared no expense to ensure I had the best of everything. Being their last child, I was their little prince. They showered me with affection and gifts, and it was no secret that I was their favorite. My siblings, who were older and had seen the same level of care and attention fade as they grew up, often voiced their frustrations. They felt neglected compared to the attention and privileges I received. But my parents were unwavering. They saw me as their final chance to relive their parenting glory, and they were determined to make the most of it. I was their baby, and they made sure everyone knew it. They didn't hold back and indulged me in ways that were both obvious and extravagant. It was as if they wanted to prove to the world, and perhaps to themselves, that they were giving me everything they could, perhaps to make up for any regrets they might have had with their other children. I didn't realize it at the time, but this constant stream of indulgence was shaping me in ways that would eventually lead to my downfall. Looking back, I can see how their well-intentioned pampering fostered a sense of entitlement in me. It led to a life where I felt invincible and beyond the reach of consequences. As a teenager, I was the embodiment of rebellion. My parents had worked so hard to give me everything, yet I threw it all away with reckless abandon. I hung out with a group of friends who were as lost as I was. We spent our days and nights smoking, partying, and even harassing girls. Breaking rules and being rebels was thrilling. My friends and I would rather gather in rooms, inhaling unhealthy smoke, than do something better for ourselves. We avoided our prayers. Matter of fact, our religion as a whole. We laughed and joked about our exploits. It felt like we were invincible, living in a bubble of our own making. The thrill of partying all night, defying curfews, and ignoring the consequences was intoxicating. I would come home in the early hours of the morning, my clothes reeking of smoke, my head spinning from the night's excesses. My parents would be waiting for me, their faces etched with worry and disappointment. They often tried to reach out to me, to pull me back from the edge, but I was too caught up in my own world to listen.
This isn't how we raised you, Salim. Why are you hurting us? We never made you sad, so why are you doing this to us?
I could always see the hurt in her eyes, and a part of me would feel guilty. But because I felt I was doing the right thing and simply enjoying my teenage years, I would try to make her understand. I'm just hanging out with friends, Mom. You don't understand. It's just how we do things. Times have changed. This is how we have fun now.
Salim, this isn't fun. You're destroying your life and betraying your religion. Son, we're worried about you. This behavior isn't who you are. It's not the path we've worked so hard to set for you.
I knew they were disappointed and concerned. I knew they truly wanted the best for me, but at that time, I thought I was doing the right thing, and they should understand me. I get it, Dad, but you don't understand. My friends, they get me. They're my world. You should understand me too. I know you both want the best for me, but you should trust me to take care of myself. I know what's best for me. Despite my parents' heartfelt pleas, I continued down my destructive path. My mother soon noticed that I'd stopped attending prayers, much to her dismay. She tried countless times to force me to pray with her, but it never worked. My mind wasn't prepared to pray anymore. One night, after a particularly wild party, I found myself in a situation that wasn't really new, but it landed me in trouble. We were in the park, and a few of my friends began harassing a group of girls. They were making crude jokes and pushing boundaries, and I, caught up in the moment, joined in. We'd beaten one of the girls up and left her there without caring about what the consequences would be. Unfortunately for us, we were caught. The area had CCTV cameras around, and her father was in the police force. My friends and I were arrested and locked up in the police custody. My parents were devastated when they heard the news. They and my siblings rushed to the police station to see me. As I looked at them, I felt ashamed to see their looks of hurt. I saw my mom go on her knees to beg the girl's father because he refused to grant us bail. My dad begged for days. My siblings ensured to bring me food and also assure me that they'd get me out. Eventually, my parents' pleading paid off, and I was released. My other friends were also released because my parents had begged on their behalf since their own parents had given up on them and abandoned them. When we got home, my mom burst into tears. My dad was visibly broken. For the first time in my life, I saw my dad cry. And it was because of me. I resolved to change my ways. I wanted to do better for my parents because they deserved it. They didn't deserve to be getting hurt by me all the time. I stopped speaking to my friends. I reduced smoking because I couldn't just stop. I began eating healthy food. I also begged my mom to teach me how to pray again, and she was more than happy to do so. I saw my family smile happily again whenever they saw me. Their happiness motivated me to do even better. Unfortunately, that didn't last too long. My friends came over to see me one day, and that was the beginning of another rebellion. They told me about their plan to rob a bank. I was hesitant at first because I'd never stolen anything before. I knew my friends often broke into people's houses to steal things sometimes, but I was never part of them. I did all other things, but that's too dangerous. I can't do it. In fact, I'm turning a new leaf. I'm trying to make my parents happy again. If I do this, then I'm going to make them sad when they find out. They refused to give up. They told me I wouldn't need to steal anything. They said all they needed me to do was be on the lookout for them while they did the robbing. I thought about it and decided to give in. After all, I wasn't going to be robbing. I began to hang out with my friends again because we had to make plans for the operation. I was only 21 then. I would lie to my parents about wanting to take a walk. They were happy to see me trying to be healthy, and it made me feel guilty because I was lying to them. Instead of taking the walk, I would go to my friends. Being with them, I couldn't avoid smoking heavily. I would refuse the alcohol because I didn't want to get drunk, but I would smoke a lot. When I returned home, my parents were mostly already asleep or already in their rooms, so they never saw that I returned home very high. Eventually, the day of the robbery attack came. I was so nervous. My parents and siblings were away, as they'd gone to spend a week at my grandparents'. They wanted me to go with them, but I refused. I pretended to be busy with something important so they let me meet them later. The day after they left home, I went with my friends to the bank where they were supposed to rob. When I arrived at the meeting place, my heart was racing. I had been told I was just there to help keep watch, but what happened next shocked me. One of my friends handed me a gun. I held it awkwardly. What am I supposed to do with this?
Are you going to watch out without any protection? What if the police come? You have to shoot at them if necessary. Be a man.
I was terrified. I didn't want to get involved in anything dangerous. I tried to argue, but my friends threatened to tell my parents everything I'd been up to since I returned from the police custody. I didn't want them to find out. So, reluctantly, I took the gun. We drove to the bank, and I felt a knot of fear in my stomach. We were all wearing masks and dark clothes. My heart was pounding, but I tried to act calm. I held the gun tightly, though it felt strange and heavy in my hands. Inside the bank, everything seemed to go according to plan. My friends were quick and efficient, and we took control of the situation. I stayed near the entrance, trying to stay out of the way, but still keep an eye on things. As we started to leave the bank, everything began to fall apart. I heard the distant sound of sirens, which grew louder and closer. Panic set in. I glanced back and saw police cars pulling up to the bank. Officers jumped out, their guns ready. Suddenly, there was chaos. One of my friends shouted at me to run. We started to sprint, but it was clear we were too late. The police were already closing in. I was frozen with fear. I didn't know what to do. The gun in my hand felt heavier and heavier. The police began firing. My friends tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered and overwhelmed. In a blind panic, I raised the gun and started shooting at the police. My hands were shaking and my shots were wild, but I could see the police officers falling. I felt sick to my stomach as I realized what I was doing. 2 officers went down, and the sight of their bodies made me feel even more terrified. Just as I was trying to escape, I felt a sharp pain in my back. I could hear the sounds of my friends crying out as they too were hit by police bullets. I looked around and saw them falling. I blacked out from the pain and fear. When I woke up, I was in an ambulance, lying on a stretcher. The pain in my back was intense, and I could barely move. The sirens were still blaring, and I was rushed to the hospital. The court hearings were absolutely heartbreaking. Apparently, I had killed some police officers. My lawyer tried to defend me, but it was clear that the evidence against me was overwhelming. The judge read out the charges and the sentences. I was sentenced to life in prison. While it was going on, the wife of one of the cops I'd killed attacked me. Security around tried to pull her away, but her grip was so tight.
You're so evil. He has 3 children. Where do I start from with them, you wicked thing? Why did you kill him?
All I could do was apologize to her. I felt my heart shatter as I saw the pain in her eyes. I felt nothing but pure hatred.
It's not fair. How could you take him from us? Our kids are still so young. Because of you, they're going to grow up without a father. Are you happy? Are you satisfied?
I began to cry too. I nearly fainted because everyone in the courtroom held nothing but hatred in their eyes for me. The crying woman in front of me made me regret every single bad action I made. The judge quickly read out the charges and the sentences. It was as if he wanted to get rid of me as fast as he could. I was sentenced to life in prison. I saw my parents crying silently. I knew I disappointed them in the worst way. As for the damage to my spine, it meant I would never fully recover. I was left with a broken body and a broken life.
I hope you know how much you've hurt us. You're going to make us live the rest of our lives wondering how we went wrong with you. I hope you know that.
I deeply regret having you as a child, Salim. That crying woman is going to live as a widow with 3 children who are now fatherless, all because of you. The other cop was the only son and the breadwinner of his family. I hope you know that you've damaged them by killing him.
I couldn't stop crying. I tried to hold my mom, but she slapped my hands off. She only stared at me once more before leaving the courtroom. I cried loudly, begging for forgiveness, but everyone abandoned me. I deserved it. I still do. It's been 6 years since I've been in jail, yet I still have decades to go, depending on how long I live for. My parents never visited me. My older siblings only visited me twice to tell me how my end had affected my parents. The first time, I was told that my dad was battling depression and my mom's health was failing. The second time, I heard that they were better, but refused to let anyone ever speak about me. They'd canceled me and didn't want to hear even my name. I cry every day because I feel like a total failure. They gave me everything, and all they received was pain. I would give anything to go back in time and correct my actions, or even get a hug from my parents and see their smiles again. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel.